Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Forest Carbon University. I'm Melinda Gable with the Forest Landowners Foundation. We're going to take a few seconds here and let everybody knock on the door and come on into the room. So while we're sitting in the chat, if you want to put in the chat where you're from or who you're with, we'd love to know. Thanks. All right, we're going to be respectful of everyone's time, so we will get going. Again, I'm Melinda Gable with the Forest Landowner Foundation, and you were joining us for the Forest Carbon University. This is one of our landowner learning webinar series that we are doing, funded in part with a grant from the Forest Service. And for those of you who have not joined us before, we have recordings of our previous voluntary carbon marketplace providers that we've done with the new and NCX. We also had a great introductory, just kind of 101 carbon, but actually going deeper, because we did a survey of landowners asking them, what is it that you know about voluntary carbon markets, and what is it that you don't know and you've been wanting to know? Because the purpose of this is to really go a little deeper and to make sure that we're giving you the information that you need from whether it's a legal standpoint, a management standpoint, or taking that next step if it works for you to engage in a carbon marketplace, or just to see where the landscape of this market is right now as it's emerging. It's definitely evolving, and we've seen that from some of our previous presenters talking about how they are adapting their program to meet the needs of landowners. And so today, we have the American Forest Foundation and the Family Forest Carbon Program, which is also part of the Nature Conservancy. Jonathan Shears is going to present. And I really encourage you, as he's presenting, if a question pops in your mind, enter it in the Q&A, and I will address it at the end, and we'll have a conversation. But today is for you to just get a deep dive into this program and let Jonathan tell us all about it. So Jonathan, happy to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Melinda. Just really grateful to be a part of this great educational series that you're putting on. And I think it's really great for landowners to be able to see all the different programs that are out there and the nuanced differences between us. So I'm hoping to get through my presentation pretty quickly today and leave lots of time for questions from the audience. My name is Jonathan Shears. I work for the American Forest Foundation. I've been there for 3.5 years. I previously worked on our Southern Biodiversity team, so I've been a part of a lot of longleaf and bottomland hardwood projects, but I've been working on carbon now specifically for 2 years. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about the carbon program that we've got going with the Nature Conservancy. Today, you're going to cover how the FFCP works, how to enroll in the program, the forestry practices that are at the root of all of this. And then, like I said, lots of time for questions and answers at the end. So many of you are probably familiar with the Nature Conservancy. They're the largest conservation group in the world, last time I checked. They partnered with us going back about 3 years bringing a lot of scientific expertise and just unique capacity across a lot of different fields. The American Forest Foundation, if you don't know us, was actually born out of the American Tree Farm System, and I'm sure many of you will recognize the green and white sign on this slide, which is a volunteer-led certification program for mostly family forest owners. From that, we've grown to take on a number of conservation projects. We still manage the tree farm system at a national level and support the different state chapters. We have more recently become a developer in the carbon space, again, starting this program, the Family Forest Carbon Program, with the Nature Conservancy 3 years ago. So I understand from Melinda that this group's gotten a good background in carbon markets, which is great, because you don't have to hear me talk about that over again. But we basically started this program out of a recognized need for somebody to bridge the gap for family forest owners to access carbon markets. Based on the history and studies of markets, the minimum you typically would need for a carbon project is 5,000 acres, which is considerably larger than the average family woodlot, the average non-industrial private forest. So the way we sought to solve this issue and provide access to carbon markets for the family and private landowners we've served for over 80 years is by creating a practice-based program. This is really what sets us apart from traditional carbon projects. As a landowner, you get, if you sign up with us, you'll get annual incentive payments that are tied to your implementation of a specific management practice that we know is going to result in additional carbon storage and sequestration, rather than typical carbon projects, which are carbon volume based, where you're only getting paid for the amount of carbon that you're able to monitor and verify. And that process is very expensive and is the single piece that has shut smaller landowners out of carbon markets to date. So again, practice-based program was our approach to solve for that issue. Just overview of the program's benefits for landowners. Obviously, there's funding involved. Annual payments are made to landowners who are implementing a management practice that's going to sequester carbon. We offer technical support. We work with a number of foresters. We have some on our staff. We also look to empower consulting foresters out there who are working with landowners to bring them this program. So that if you're a landowner, you already have a relationship with a forester, you can continue to work with that forester throughout this process. And the foresters will visit the property and take measurements, as well as prepare management plans. That's a pretty integral part of our program. Within those management plans, as a result of that technical service, we look to address all the different things that we count on from forests, whether it's timber production, wildlife habitat, clean water and air resources, you name it, all the benefits that we love and that we tout from forests. We want to make sure that we're able to maximize those in addition to carbon sequestration. And obviously we're two conservation organizations. We're in it for the landowner, we're in it for the planet as well. So we want to make sure that our credits are rooted in high integrity. So the credits that we generate and sell from the program are actually making a difference in the atmosphere. In a couple ways we do this. We developed a brand new methodology under the Verified Carbon Standard. That's our registry, VCS, you may know it. We've started a dynamic baseline, which I'll cover a bit on the next slide, but basically the properties that are enrolled in our program are generating credits by being compared to actual real forests instead of what's called a model baseline, which is where you come up with a scenario of what could have happened to the forest without a carbon project. So we know that we're actually comparing apples to apples here and making sure that the carbon benefits are real. The other thing we do to ensure the integrity of our carbon credits is by working with buyers, so the companies that are purchasing offsets, who are demonstrating, a part of their strategy is to reduce their emissions, right? So instead of just buying credits to offset all of your carbon emissions, as a company, we're expecting you to take some steps to reduce them where it makes sense and buy credits for where it doesn't. I mentioned the baseline. I really like this graphic because it shows kind of how it looks across the landscape. The orange pins represent monitoring plots on an enrolled property. So let's say you enroll your this looks like probably 40 acres in the program. We'll install a couple of monitoring plots and send a forestry crew out there to measure them over the years. We do this on a random sample of enrolled properties. So not every single property, not every single acre is going to get monitored. That's how we kind of keep costs down and pass on those savings and in higher incentive rates to our landowners. Once we have those monitoring plots in place, we have that stand data. It gets compared to a set of measured plots from the Forest Inventory and Analysis Program, which is run by the U.S. Forest Service. They do regular monitoring on both public and private lands. So if you're enrolled in this program, your property is getting compared to the 10 most similar FIA plots that are on private lands. We do that matching by looking at different characteristics of forests that are predictive of timber harvest behavior. So, distance to a paved road, distance to a mill, the slope of your property, things like that, that would influence your ability to do a commercial harvest. So that's one of the ways that we really make sure we're, again, measuring apples to apples and seeing that the enrolled properties are sequestering more carbon than the baseline. This graphic shows the difference between a family forest carbon program enrolled property and a property that's being high graded. So this would represent a really high return from a carbon standpoint. The green line is the enrolled property. The yellow line represents a property that's being repeatedly high graded. So you can see over time, you've got a healthier, more productive forest, and you actually are capable of doing more timber harvesting down the road in a sustainable fashion by reducing harvest in the very short term. This is this green shaded area in the middle represents additional carbon sequestration. And then the entire theory behind the program is that we're basically running a science experiment where the enrolled properties are the treatment, the baseline's the control, and over time across the landscape, that carbon benefit is going to continue to accumulate until it's made a pretty substantial difference there. So again, that green shaded area, that's where the carbon credits exist. And as we're able to monitor those, verify those, and sell them to buyers, that's going to go into creating a sustainable program that helps us enroll more and more landowners and pass on its incentive rates. So that's the mechanics of the program in a nutshell. I'm happy to touch on those more during the Q&A, but I want to talk about the actual enrollment process for landowners in this program. Right now, you can see the dots represent areas where we have where we're actively enrolling folks in carbon contracts. So we started in the Central Appalachians, that's Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and then the westernmost counties of Maryland. We, over the summer, launched in the Northeast. That's all of Vermont, western part of Massachusetts, and the eastern part of New York, mostly along the Hudson Valley. Just in the last month or so, we've launched across the Lake States. We're calling it our Northwoods pilot. It's select counties in northern parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, which we're very excited about. And I saw from the chat, we got a lot of folks in the Southeast. We're coming soon. We're really working on it. We are developing management practices right now to meet Southeast forest needs, and we hope to be active down there very soon, definitely by next year. To be eligible for the program, you have to have at least 30 acres of contiguous eligible forest. There can't already be any restrictions in place that limit your timber harvesting. So an example of that would be like a conservation easement that says you can only remove 10% of your timber volume. That would render at least that part of the forest ineligible for a carbon project with us, because that timber is already basically locked up. We are compatible with most cost share programs. I know a lot of folks take advantage of the NRCS programs and other cost sharing that's out there. As long as those practices, as long as those projects with NRCS or other cost sharing entities aren't paying you already to do the exact same thing as our program, usually those are copacetic. If they are paying you to do the exact same thing, then that would be considered double dipping, and that would render the forest ineligible. The enrollment process, try to make it really straightforward. We have a really cool mapping tool on our website that I encourage you to check out, especially if you're in one of the active areas right now. You can go into a map and click on your parcels and see from there whether it's in an area that's eligible for the Family Forest Carbon Program. That triggers like a sign up where one of our representatives will reach out to you. We've got a great team who's really good at walking through the process for landowners and making it simple. They'll do an introductory call just to see what's your forest like, what are you managing for, what are your objectives, and does carbon fit with those? If it seems like a good fit from there, we will have a forester come visit your property. If you have one of your own, they can do this visit. If you have an existing management plan, sometimes we can just take the measurements off of that and skip the visit. And if you're a landowner who does not already work with a forester, we can assign one to you. That initial visit is just to confirm that there's a forest there, and it's a productive enough forest that it could, sustain a carbon project. Forester's going to take a number of measurements, send those back to the office. We crunch the numbers and generate a contract. The landowner then reviews and signs the contract if it all looks good, and within 60 days you receive your first payment, which actually makes up 20% of the total contract payment. So it's a nice chunk that you get up front. From then on, the carbon contracts with us last 20 years. Within the first year, you're going to get a management plan. If you have one already, there's funding to update it. If you don't have a management plan, you can work with a forester to write it. And then that management plan is going to get updated midway through the contract, so in year 10. And again, with funding, with assistance to get that done. I think to me, that's the strength of our program, is that opportunity to work with a forester and to write a management plan, to keep it up to date. Those management plans are up to you to tailor to your own goals for your own forest management. As long as the practice that we've decided on for carbon is included in there, you can add any other complementary management objectives that you're interested in. Anything to improve forest health, to generate timber, to manage for wildlife, whatever it is. We're actually working with a number of partners right now and looking to build out our partnerships to make sure that we have expertise covered for every possible desire from landowners in this process. So like I mentioned, we work closely with the American Tree Farm System. So if certification is something that you're interested in as a landowner in the carbon project or carbon program, we can help you through that. We've got a relationship with the Audubon Society in a number of states. So if you're interested in managing birds, you can do that and work that into your management plan. And you can consult with your forester as well to make sure that any additional objectives are captured there. And foresters, this is a great opportunity to engage with landowners around additional management objectives as well. There's a ton of work to be done, which is really good news, I think, for the forest industry at large. A few examples of landowners who have entered the program. This is John Dysart. He owns 376 acres in Huntingdon County, Pennsylvania, along with his wife, Sylvia. They've been an absolute joy to work with. John's been a part of this a part of this land for about 55 years. He started as a member of a hunting club and bought out the shares from his co-owners when he retired. He initially actually heard about our program because he saw an ad on Facebook. He gave us a call, had a forester out to walk the property, and to him as a retiree, a little extra income is a really good thing. He pockets some, he puts some towards the property taxes and towards the upkeep of the property. As you can see, he feels very strongly. We like to have him talk to landowners who might be on the fence about the program, because he says he'd be foolish not to get into the program when it's aimed to help him hold on to his land. And that's to us, that's great news, because that's exactly what we were trying to solve for in starting this initiative. I also want to talk about the Hartman sisters, also in Pennsylvania. They were one of these two were a couple of the first folks to enroll in the program. This land had been in their property for many generations, and the Hartman sisters had inherited it, and they were pretty new to forest management. They'd spent a lot of time on the farm, mostly recreationally, spending time with family from when they were children. But forest management was a new realm to them. So they found out about this program, and it fit with their goals of just holding on to the property and finding a way to make some income off of it. But as a part of the process, they kind of learned a lot more about forest management, what they could be doing with the forest, managing for forest health, managing for wildlife, managing for clean water. They've got a stream and a pond on the property. So through this program, it actually kind of can be a new hook that brings in landowners into the fold, into the realm of forest management, who may not have been engaged before. And now the Hartman sisters are becoming they're quick learners. They're becoming experts in what they do, and I think their property is going to be better off for it. And then I just like to leave this slide up. I've gotten to meet a couple of these landowners so far, and they've got good things to say about our program. So just leave that up for y'all to digest for a second. All right, so moving along to the actual forest management practices here, I hope there are some silviculture fans in the audience. This might be your favorite part of the presentation. What are we actually paying folks to do? As a practice-based program, this is really, really important to us, and this is the process that takes the most time to build. And so I'll get into that in a minute. But basically, we've worked with the Nature Conservancy, with foresters, with landowners, with stakeholders in these areas from various walks of life to try and figure out, okay, what are the management practices that these different forest types need across different regions of the country, and how can we find the ones that intersect with carbon best, so that we can make sure that we're actually making a difference for the health of these forests and meeting the goals of landowners and foresters in the regions, while also storing additional carbon. We're really looking for the sweet spot, and it takes a while to develop these. But what we're offering in the Central Appalachians region is a practice called growing mature forests. This is the one we've got the most contracts for so far, on account of we've been in that region for the longest. This is a practice aimed at curbing high grading, which has been an issue, and has led to degradation over the years of certain forests there. And for those who don't know, that's a practice where you cut just the biggest and best trees, and it can, in doing so, can reduce the genetics and the diversity of a forest stand. So we're trying to give folks an incentive to hold off until they've got more of those preferable species, more of those good genetics, and they can still do a commercial harvest but leave behind a good seed source. The way we do that is by limiting harvesting to 25% of the initial basal area. Landowners enrolled in this practice cannot reduce their that's quadratic mean diameter, basically the average diameter of trees across a stand. by more than 10%, and that prevents from removing just the biggest trees. While enrolled in this program, you can remove wood for personal use, things like firewood. If you're a woodworking enthusiast, this works for you. And then the other practice that we are hoping to begin to offer again very soon is enhancing the future forest. This is for stands that have either undergone a regeneration cut or have one planned in the near future. And basically, once that harvest is done, we can pay landowners to come in and spray herbicide, do a burn, do different measures to control competing vegetation that's going to potentially compete with the regenerating, young forest. Again, we're still working out the carbon mechanics of this. It's a tricky one because it starts with a harvest. So it starts with a carbon reduction, but in the end is actually a very good thing for the longevity of the forest there. So we're trying to work out this one with our registry and scientists and hope to have that nut cracked really soon because it's a valuable practice to have. In the Northeast, so again, this is southern New England and parts of New York. We've got a practice called Enhance Your Woodland. Very similar limitations on harvesting. You can still do thinning and small gap creation, but under a limit in the amount of basal area you can remove. Personal removals for firewood are also allowed here. This will fetch you $200. What is it? It's $200 per acre over the total over the course of 20 years. The reason I say per acre per 20 years instead of per acre per year is because we do have that pretty significant upfront payment in the first year of the contract. So it doesn't quite factor out to an even amount over 20 years, but again, $200 per acre is the total that this contract will fetch you. Then growing older forests. This is the only full-on harvest deferment practice we have in our program. In talking to stakeholders up there, we found there was actually appetite for something that was a no harvest scenario. And this practice, again, 20 years of no harvest. It's best employed in ecologically sensitive areas, riparian areas with rare species. But this will get you $300 per acre. Again, total over the course of 20 years. The Midwest, we have growing mature forests again, similar to the previous regions. This is specifically for northern hardwood stands. You can do thinning, you can do small group selection, and you can remove up to 25% of your basal area while maintaining the average stand diameter. This practice will get you $200 in total per acre over the course of your 20-year contract. Then the other practice that we're still working through and hope to offer very soon is for aspen birch stands, where there's a little bit more of an even age cycle of management typically. We limit removals there to 60% of the volume, so pretty substantial amount you're still able to harvest. But we have retention zones are going to be left behind, and what you're going to be left with is a more diverse stand with vigorous regrowth, probably from the aspen, as well as retaining some of the longer lived tree species. So that's one I'm really excited about to see in action. Oh, I'm sorry. The promoting diverse forests is $150 per acre over the 20 years. Finally, in the Southeast, I know we've got a lot of folks from down there on the call today. We have a pilot going right now for reforestation of marginal pasture lands. This is the first year of it. We're looking at conversion from pasture land to pine plantations. And we've actually got a few landowners lined up to do planting this winter, so this season, which is very exciting. Then in addition to that, we are working on similar improved forest management practices like we have for the other regions. Obviously, the Southeast has unique forest types that don't get managed exactly the same way as some of these northern hardwoods that we've worked in the past do. So we're trying to figure out treatments for pine plantations, for bottomland hardwoods, for some of the mountainous species we have. So it's going to be a bit of a process to work those out, but it's in good hands right now with scientists from the Nature Conservancy and modelers to figure out the carbon benefit of different practices. So we hope to have these again ready for landowners to start implementing sometime in 2023, hopefully by the spring. It's in the process right now. All right, that was our silviculture 101 for today, and that's it for the Family Forest Carbon Program. Really appreciate y'all tuning in, and I'm happy to open it up for questions. Melinda?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. That was great. And we do have a few questions in the chat box, so I will go ahead and start with those, and then please chime in. Anyone else who has questions as we go along. So there's a question, can timberland that is in a conservation easement be enrolled in your program? And this landowner specifically says, if the timberland is in FSC certified in a conservation easement, would it not be eligible to enroll in your program?
I'd have to look at the easement. So easements are a bit of a gray area, and it really depends easement to easement. It all depends on how much timbering you're allowed to do by your conservation easement. So if you're already restricted in the kinds of removals you can do, oftentimes that will render a property ineligible for a carbon project. But if it's a working forest easement, which I know a lot of folks write, that would work with our program. So thanks for that question, Joe. I'd have to look at your easement in particular to tell you for sure.
And I guess along the same lines of that, some of the other programs that we've had present, they do require you to be certified if you're going to harvest some of your timber, your wood. Do you require that enrollees to your program also are in the American Tree Farm system?
We don't. What we do require is some measurements both before and after a timber harvest, so we can be sure that it fell within the within the restrictions of these practices. But no, certification is not required.
Great. All right, thanks. And then I have to agree, I wasn't sure what this term was either, but somebody wanted to know, can you explain QMD in layman's terms? So you had a couple of slides up there talking about the program and QMD. Yeah,
most foresters will know this one. It's the average diameter of trees in a forest stand. It's a measure of, are your trees on average, are they 10 inches in diameter? Are they 18? Or are they 24? The idea with that and why that's important to these practices is, again, if we're going to go into a stand and limit the amount of timbering you can do, you could easily turn around and say, well, I can retain most of my volume by just cutting out the biggest and best trees. And what we've heard from experts in the field is that can actually have really poor long-term effects. So it's kind of a safeguard that people aren't just using our program and then high grading at the same time. It's a safeguard against taking out just the biggest trees by requiring you to retain a certain average stand diameter and make sure that a certain number of those large trees are retained in any kind of harvest.
And I take it that all that work, it sounds like, for your program, you addressed this in one of your slides, it's really on the ground work that they come out and cruise the timberland or the forest to determine the practices, this QMD. Is that correct?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And so then how do they determine the value or how much carbon will be generated from the landowner enrolling in the program?
So we've got, before we roll any of these practices out, we go through a modeling process. We use the Forest Vegetation Simulator, if anybody's familiar with that. It's a Forest Service tool. And we've had some modelers do some really advanced kind of coding work that's well over my head. But what it does is it gives us a degree of confidence, because like I said, we start paying in year one, when realistically carbon credits are probably generated in years 15 to 20 as the forest is growing. So, to do that, we have to have a really high degree of confidence that the practices that we're paying for are going to result in enough carbon that we can go sell it and pay that money back. So what we do is go and model and understand kind of like a regional average of how many tons of carbon dioxide equivalent are going to be sequestered by a particular practice. And if it's above a certain threshold, then we know we can offer it to landowners. The payments themselves are based on that kind of regional average. So we're sure that if we enroll a property in Enhancer Woodlands in the Northeast, we're going to see, I believe it's 1.2 tons per acre per year. And that's a number we're okay with at that incentive rate to landowners, knowing that our program is going to continue to sustain itself financially.
Great. So I think this kind of this next question goes into what you were just getting on explaining. So the payouts are there. You said there's a large payout up front, but then over the 20 years, and it varies based on the region. It sounded like you said some 200 and 300 over a 20-year period. But could you explain that the payout up front, is that part of that $200 per acre, or is that separate?
Yep, that's part of it. So it's complex, but I think it's really exciting from a landowner standpoint. And we've gotten good feedback on it from the most part. The 20% in year one is it's effectively a bit of a signing bonus. And then we pay I think 10% at year 20 to kind of incentivize people to stay in for the full 20 years. Within that, there's kind of an escalating. You get 3% of your total contract amount for the first 5 years, for the years 2 to 6, then 4%, then 5%, and all that's based on an escalating assumed price of carbon credits in the market. Like I'm sure, as you all have heard, everybody expects this market to continue to grow, and for the price of a carbon credit to continue to increase. And so we know we're locking folks into 20-year contracts. It's not as long-term as some of the carbon projects out there, but it is a long-term commitment. And we don't want folks to miss out on the growth of the market. So the program's set up to move with a forecasted growth in the price of carbon, so that you're not getting locked into an unfavorable rate, for a growing market that's going to exist for 20 years. So again, complex. I'm happy to share. I've got a table somewhere that lays it out, and I'm happy to share with anybody who's interested. Yeah, there's a reason. There's a method for the madness there.
So it sounds like what you're saying is you might say it's a $200 per acre, but if you find the price of the carbon credits and the carbon credits that the Family Forest Carbon Program is selling goes up, you adjust that for the landowners, that they'll receive more than the originally agreed upon price.
So the incentive rates are actually, that's an assumption that the price of carbon is going to increase is baked into the price setting that we have right now.
Okay.
If it like absolutely blows out of the water, which we hope it does, there's plans in place for us to share, because again, we're both nonprofits running this. We're operating on little to no margin at all, because all the money we make goes back into the program. So if we do find that we're having profits because of a serious increase in the price of carbon, we've been working on plans to share those with landowners, and we've got no reason to pocket that. But yeah, as for now, we've already baked in a certain forecasted increase in the price of a carbon credit into the financial model that sets incentive rates for landowners. Okay,
that's good. And this is, so your program's a little different than others in that you said to implement the forest practices. Are those payments to to help pay for implementing the forest practices, or can the landowner, I know you talked about it, they were already in an NRCS program, but how do they implement those practices and pay for those practices?
Yeah, so as you saw, like most of the practices are actually, they're relatively passive, right? So it's not like they're not practices you have to go hire a crew to come out and do. They're practices that you write in your forest management plan and that you take into consideration if and when you do harvest, right? Most of them are limiting harvest behavior. For the reforestation project, that is a more active practice. And if we are able to start offering enhancing the future forest, the invasives treatment, that'll be a more active practice. The idea is for there to for reforestation. I know there's the landowner doesn't bear any of the cost of buying seedlings and planting them, of site prep, of any of that. The enhancing future forest, I think when we were offering it, we were able to cover, I think it was 70 to 80% of the cost of implementation. It's complicated with NRCS if they could, I don't know the word really, kind of supplement payments from us for the same practice. If they do that, then we don't really have a claim to the carbon rights, right? Because we're paying, it's two entities paying for the same thing. So that becomes very murky quickly. So again, NRCS practice or NRCS projects that pay for the exact same practice is usually a no-go. But if you're in a contract with us to do growing older forests, growing mature forests, and you also want to on the side pursue a contract with NRCS to spray for invasives, that's totally fine. We'd love for you to do that actually, because that's furthering the mission of healthy forests. So yeah, again, depends on the practice and the particular project.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. All right. Somebody was asking if you could go into more detail about the pasture land opportunities and project.
I can. I've not worked on it a whole lot myself, but I've got some really sharp colleagues who are, and I can get you more information on it. But in its most basic terms, it's a 30-year contract, so it's 10 years longer than the other improved forest management practices we have. But basically, we pay folks who have pasture land to convert it into. We're using loblolly for year one. We're exploring using other tree species, but we've got the best growth and yield data on loblolly. We're going to we're going to plant loblollies on that pasture land. You, the landowner, have to keep it a forest for the 30 years that it's under contract. Though you are allowed to commercially thin, I think, once during that 30-year rotation. That's really the basis of it. I can get you more information though on the exact mechanics of how the program works, but it's a pretty exciting opportunity, I think, and that's in Alabama, Georgia, and I believe South Carolina.
Great. And then I think this comes up a lot. I know with others, I've heard this question. So what if you've recently planted, maybe you recently converted, your pasture land, but you didn't sign up for the program. Are you eligible under this program?
For the reforestation one now, we're hoping to have a really robust menu of different management practices out there, to the point where we can offer something to just about every landowner for just about every forest type. It's going to be a while before we get there, but the idea behind figuring out some of our practices for existing forests and currently growing forests in the Southeast is that we'd have practices to cover pine plantations. It'd be hard to make a lot of impact in the South without something for loblolly pine, for longleaf pine. So that's something we're really interested in figuring out. What the right practice is for that. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but our goal is to have something for your particular stand of trees.
All right, great. And then a question about the payments, are they indexed to the inflation rate or are they constant dollars? But I think you might have already answered that 20% year one, 10% year 30, and then trickled in between.
Yeah, I know. So inflation is an assumption in that price setting model. So there's kind of one financial model that runs this whole show. And yeah, inflation and the rising price of a carbon credit are two things that are baked into what sets the incentive rates. So again, like that escalation over the years that you're in the program is tied to those assumptions.
Great. Well, we have time for some other questions. Jonathan, if you could put, I think, the slide with your email back up, because
Oh,
if
yeah,
anybody did want to email you on some of the deeper detailed questions or the reforestation, and then you could send them on to the right contact. Yeah, so there's Jonathan's email. Of course, you can always contact anyone here too at the Forest Landowners. If you can contact me if you have further questions. And all of these will be recorded and they will be on our Forest Carbon University web pages. So you can go back and listen or find contacts. They're also listed there. So I am not seeing any other questions, and I think we are, about there with the full hour. So well, it sounds like, Jonathan, you guys are definitely, you have a lot going on, and you're trying to account for all the different regions and tree species and different types of forest landowners. So it is an evolving market, that's for sure. So thank you so much for coming on today and answering the questions. It was very insightful. And we really appreciate that. And thank you, everybody. Continue to look for, we have one more. Oh, there's one more question. Let me get that. What would be the penalty if someone steps out of the program in year 10? Yeah, any retroactive penalty for that?
Yeah, the penalties are a bit, they have to be steep because of the way our registry sets it up. We would have to, if we have people exit the program before completing the 20-year contract, we lose count for all that all the carbon that we could have claimed from that property, and we then have to go buy credits from other developers in what's called a buffer pool. So in order to do that, we require, if somebody steps out of the program, payback of all dollars earned to date plus a 27%, I believe it is. No, I'm sorry, we reduced it. It's 15% penalty on top of that. So it's pretty toothy, and that, for that reason, I definitely encourage people to make sure that this is a program that they're fully intent on staying in ahead of time. And you'll notice that if you've dealt with us, you'll notice that we're like very upfront always about what the program is and what it isn't, in an effort to make sure that we're all on the same page, right? We're not trying to trick anybody into joining this. So yeah, it's toothy, but it helps us make sure that we're working with that we're committed to you and you're committed to us, and we're all gonna stay in this project for the full 20 years.
And I guess that goes to a question we had with an earlier carbon market provider. If you sell your forest land and you're in this program, how is that handled?
Yeah, the contract runs with the property. So if you as the seller of the property would never be accountable if the new owner drops out. That would be something that the buyer would have to would uncover in due diligence, and would have to be sure that they're aware of and okay with continuing the contract for however many years are left. And so the only thing there is we're still figuring out if it's to some buyers have an income on the property already in place when you buy it is a value add. For some folks, the inability to go and develop property makes it less valuable. So we're still figuring out exactly how that works for buyers. But either way, you can rest assured that if you sell your property in the middle of a contract, you're not gonna be penalized.
Great. All right. Thank you. Well, yeah, sorry we had those questions pop up there. But again, thank you, everyone. And we hope to see you at the next Forest Carbon University webinar. Thanks so much, Jonathan.
Thank you. Take care.